Hello, beautiful homemakers. We are finally beginning Pamphlet 4 of the original 1922 Fascinating Womanhood Pamphlets. Chapter 7, The Quality That Inspires Love. In the 3 foregoing chapters, we have discussed the essentials of personal magnetism, healthy physical condition, healthy and wholesome thinking, and never-failing pride and self-respect. To the happy possessor of these 3 essentials, men and women both are attracted, for these 3 qualities combined produce personal magnetism. But it was established long ago that for a woman to be completely and absorbingly fascinating to a man, she must emphasize the differences between herself and him, not the similarities. It would appear, therefore, since these 3 essentials are common to both men and women of personal charm, something additional is required in woman, some characteristic which is hers alone, and which serves to emphasize the fascinating difference between herself and man. The truth of this is illustrated by the many women in all walks of life who are the possessors of great personal magnetism, whom all, including the men, admire as great and powerful characters, but who can never change the men's admiration into love. One such woman, a famous Sunday school teacher, illustrated this situation to perfection. Her magnetic character was so much admired that hundreds of young girls sought to join her class, and thousands attended whenever she gave a public lecture. In spite of this almost universal respect and admiration, the average man would never think of indulging in an intimate tete-a-tete with her, or of making her the little girl to cherish and protect throughout a lifetime. Everyone knows of such able women, healthy physically and mentally, proud and self-respecting, whom the men admire greatly, but by whom they do not seem to be fascinated. And this is also a major problem today. The reason for this is evident if you will turn back to our discussion of Amelia and Déruchette in Chapter 3. We saw that these young adorables were, first, angelic beings whom a man could adore from afar as infinitely better than himself, and second, helplessly human little creatures whom he would want to gather up in his arms to cherish and protect forever. The admirable women whom we just mentioned fulfill the first requirement, but they fail to fulfill the second. Though it is absolutely necessary, if you would attract worthy men in a worthy manner, that you also fulfill the first requirement, you cannot afford to do as these women do, neglect the second. A man simply cannot derive any joy or satisfaction from cherishing and protecting a woman who can obviously do very well without him. He delights only in cherishing and sheltering the woman who needs his manly care, or who at least appears to need it. Now, the 1935 version has one more sentence than the 1922. We are not speaking, however, of the man who wants a meal ticket or a free ride. So if you've ever seen the movie Poor Little Rich Girl about Barbara Hutton, the heiress of Woolworths, she had at least 4 husbands, most, especially the last man, who just wanted her money. Very sad situation. She was also married to Cary Grant, and he was the only husband who did not touch a dime of her money, and who remained friends with her and always felt bad for her. Now, that's totally off the subject, but I just want to stress that we are not talking about playing the fool for a man, and that there are always men who will take advantage, just as there are always women who will take advantage of men. In these pamphlets, we are talking about both men and women with a pure heart, and that's why we're mainly focusing on Christians, because at least professing Christians, those who have a true relationship with Jesus and are not Christian in name only, will be approaching marriage with a pure heart, with love in their heart, and want to be the best wife or husband possible. So that's what we're focusing on. However, before I move on, I do want to mention to single ladies, you need to be sure to know some of the red flags of romance scam artists. You need to watch at least one video from Catfished, because you must educate yourself about red flags. You don't just start chatting with people for years. If you cannot go on a real date within a week or so, that's a red flag. If he works on an oil rig or is out of the country, that's another red flag. If he is super handsome, model handsome, do an image search. Make sure he's real and that his name is real. And the same holds true for men. When a model wants to date you, chances are you're being scammed. And then also, ladies, please remember that we're looking for high-quality men, but that doesn't equate with rich men. Riches are not necessarily God's blessing. Sometimes riches are even God's judgment. Unlike today, in 1922, it was assumed that if you got married, your husband would support you completely. You only had to work if you were in dire straits, or if your husband had died, or if he became a drunkard. So while the ideal is to live off of your husband's income, sometimes it takes a little while to reach that point. But you need to be on the same page with the man that you are dating regarding finances. And another thing is, a lot of times women don't realize that once they have children, they will want to stay home. It doesn't occur to them. They think, oh yeah, I'll go back to work, no problem, until they hold that little one. And then they're like, oh no, I do not want to go back to work. But then they have to because of all their debt. So these are things that we're trying to work through ahead of time. The next section is called Why the Amazon Fails. In the 1935 book, it's called Why the Competent Businesswoman Fails. The bigger, manlier, and the more sensible a man is, the more he seems to be attracted by this second quality. What happens when the average red-blooded man comes in contact with an obviously able, intellectual, and competent woman, manifestly independent of any help a mere man can give, and capable of meeting him or defeating him upon his own ground? He simply doesn't feel like a man any longer. In the presence of such strength and ability in a mere woman, he feels like a futile, ineffectual imitation of a man. It is the most uncomfortable and humiliating sensation a man can experience, so that the woman who arouses it becomes absolutely repugnant to him. Every real man looks upon true women as tender, frail, and gentle creatures who, like beautiful flowers, need all the care and protection a man can offer them. And the most pleasant sensation a real man can experience is his consciousness of the power to give this manly care and protection. Rob him of this sensation of superior strength and ability, and you rob him of his manliness. This is what the Amazon does, no matter whether her competence be physical or mental. Do you wonder that he is repulsed? And yet, we've been brought up on movies, etc., where this is funny. The women love to see the men squirm. Women love to best men all the time. Is it because it's so hard to best a man that we revel in it so much? I don't know. For the past 100 years, feminists have taught women to do exactly this. And this is why men have no desire to marry many of the women they meet. They will use them, but they will not cherish them. Even today, the businesswoman simply isn't as attractive to the majority of men. I know that will be shocking to some women, but for the majority of men, that's true. And today we see a lot of men wanting their wife to work because they say, why should they work for a woman who doesn't need it? If you would like to stay home after you're married, then you need to plan carefully for your marriage while you're working. You need to save that money. Bring as much to the marriage as he's bringing. And while you're working, dress feminine. If you plan on working after marriage, especially with children, then you simply will be less attractive to many men. But not all. You have to find your alpha man. And there are very few alpha males who want alpha women. We've talked about this before. We may be talking about it in the future. There are some channels that focus completely on alpha women, why they have such bad marriages. This is from 100 years ago, and yet it still holds true today. Now remember that in many women's romance novels, women's literature, in the movies, and especially on the Hallmark Channel, men are portrayed as loving, confident career women who challenge them. But you have to remember that these stories are written by women, and they do not factually portray men's true feelings on the subject. They don't portray what men actually say they want in a wife. Today, many men hide their true feelings so that they won't be canceled by loud and obnoxious women. They agree in order to get along. Of course, these same men are often rejected by many women because they are too nice. And we know that too nice breeds contempt. Women today talk out of one side of their mouth and say they want a nice guy who is not threatened by their success. But they also say that they'd never date a man who makes less than them. They've made that quite clear. They also will not date men with less education than them. And this is why we have so many single women. Men no longer care to get degrees, and they don't like the attitude of college women. The majority of men don't want a confident career woman. They want a confident, smiling, joyful, fun-loving, radiant doll of a girl on which to lavish their affections. And most women today reject their innate God-given desires to create a home and care for their husband and children exclusively. Instead, they fill up their life with stress. They don't get any beauty sleep because they rush from deadline to deadline. They say they are fulfilled, but their fretful lives and the use of depression medication belies that message. When you step back and focus on creating a wonderfully fulfilling home life, you will notice the scurrying women around you screaming by their actions, "More, more, better, better, faster, faster. I'm not quite fulfilled yet, only a little more." But they are never truly satisfied. We know from research done in nursing homes that many women end their lives with the lament, "Why didn't I stay home with my child? Why didn't I have more children? Why did I give up being at home for a house payment? Why wasn't I content with what I had?" But oh my dears, that's a whole nother book, isn't it? and it's called How to Thrive on One Income. Now we will move on to the next subheading, the method that arouses a man's noblest feelings. Now look at the opposite effect produced when tender, trusting, childlike Amelia or Déruchette comes in contact with the same man. He immediately feels a sublime expansion of his power to protect and shelter this frail, delicate creature. In the presence of such weakness, he feels stronger, more competent, bigger, and manlier than ever. This feeling of strength and power is the most enjoyable he can experience. He likes to indulge it, to parade it, to strut before this timid, hesitant creature and show what a brave and able man he is. He doesn't feel futile and ineffectual now, but feels as if he possessed the strength of 10 men. If she shrinks from a spider or hops on a chair at sight of a mouse, how splendidly strong and manly he feels that he can laugh at such trembling. And what a sensation of power and superiority it gives him to calm her fears and rout the offender. Her apparent helplessness arouses every strain of chivalry within him. When speaking to this dainty creature, he wants to soften every word as if speaking to a bird, and he pictures to himself what a glorious and manly thing it would be to gather her to himself, to give her the shelter of his strength and courage forever after. The apparent need of the woman for a man's protection, instead of arousing contempt of her lack of ability, appeals to the very best and noblest feelings within him. This is because God put this protection desire in men, and the more traditional and feminine a woman, the more suitors she will entice. And yet, we've been taught to hate that. We've been told we don't need a man's protection. This is the number one reason men do not want women on the front lines. They know they will feel compelled to protect her. They know she will slow him down. It is only in the movies that women are faster and better in the majority of situations. Can a woman beat a man in a race or in tennis? It has been done, but it's rare. Will she ever beat him in wrestling, boxing, or weightlifting? Well, maybe if he's 8. I've got even more to say after the next section, so I'd better start a new video. Bye!